This morning on BRN Sunday, what's left on the retirement agenda before a change in administrations? Joining me now to help break it all down, David Levine, Kevin Walsh, both are principals with Groom Law Group, and I fondly refer to them as the Legal Eagles. Gentlemen, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Jeff, thanks for having us. It's great to be with you on video as always.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, I want to start with you. So we're post-election. We know we're going to have a new president. The makeup of the Congress and the Senate will be different. We're going to talk about that in future programs. But what I'd like to do, if I can, with you and David, is focus on some of the to-dos and things we could expect in what I'm going to call the lame duck period, the period before the new administration comes in and the new Congress come in. So Kevin, for you, let's talk about Department of Labor, DOL, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Anything we can expect from those two bodies?
So, we have a transition coming up, and it's going to be a pretty significant transition in terms of policy priorities and policy goals. So where we are is we've got the Biden administration in its last 2 months here, and there's a handful of things that it looks like they're trying to make progress on. The first is an adequate consideration reg. So they're trying to get out a proposed regulation that's going to talk about how to value a company for purposes of ESOP transactions. It's guidance that's been expected for a number of years now, and it's likely that we'll see the proposal, but that it won't be finalized until after the transition. The second big thing that we're expecting from the Biden administration relates to fiduciary. And fiduciary, for viewers, it's a saga that's lasted for almost a decade now. Mm-hmm. And where that stands is there's an appeal being heard by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals related to two challenges to the rule in Texas, where the district courts in Texas essentially said that they think the rule is very unlikely to survive judicial scrutiny. The Department of Labor has a brief due in the appeal in mid-December. So that's probably the last opportunity for the Biden administration to talk about how they'd like to see the fiduciary rule saga continue. And then if we pivot over to the SEC, what we expect to see there is less new rulemaking. When folks open new rules, there's always an opportunity that an open rulemaking through a transition can lead to a final rule pretty quick from a new administration. So, there were a number of areas where the SEC had talked about rulemaking, and it's unlikely to see those rules progress between here and January 20th with the inauguration.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot to get done. And don't forget, we've got the Christmas holidays and we've got Thanksgiving in there too. It really shortens the window. David, I want to come to you. Kevin covered Department of Labor and SEC. Let's talk about our friends, our friends at the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. Anything we can expect from them?
Absolutely, Jeff, because regardless of a change in administration, we still have everything from the Secure legislation, Secure 1.0 and Secure 2.0. There's a lot of pieces that are still out there at this point. For instance, we've had like informal guidance, but we're still waiting for guidance, for instance, on a key item, which is the Roth catch-up contributions. That's going to take some real time to implement. Just as a refresher for anybody who's with us, the idea is that we're supposed to be starting in 2024, that if someone earned more than $145,000 in the prior year, that their catch-up contributions, the ones for being over age 50, would have to be Roth after tax. And there were a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about getting payroll systems and everything up to snuff. And the IRS last year delayed everything. Now we're waiting for more guidance still on that, and people are going to be pivoting into that as we go forward. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we go forward right now. Also, there's just a lot of other things. There's still items out there about things like one bad apple involving MEPS and PEPs and other types of activity. All these items are moving forward, and we're getting guidance out of the IRS. The IRS is not helmed in this area by anywhere near to sort of political appointees. There's several layers down, even if some people were reclassified, and I know that's a future discussion, as subject to outside sort of the civil service laws. These individuals are way down. So that'll continue on as we go forward. So as we look forward into 2025 and into 2026, sponsors and plan fiduciaries and service providers right now the time is to think of the new IRS secure changes that are going into effect. People have already dealt with long-term part-time employees and some of those changes and all these other ones. What do they want to do? What can their record keepers handle? And in
Mm.
addition, waiting to see what the IRS gets. But I am strongly encouraging folks right now to really start thinking, are their payroll systems up to snuff for this Roth catch-up contribution? Because a lot of the payroll companies have done a great job getting ready for the so-called super catch-ups, the age 60 to 63 catch-ups that are the higher limits. And that's rolled out across a wide variety of payroll vendors. That this should be the next domino to fall, and we have to wait till we see that.
Yep. So a lot hinging on the Internal Revenue Service. Gentlemen, let's switch from the regulatory entities to Congress, to legislation. Kevin, I want to start with you. A new Congress takes shape or has taken shape, has been elected, but the existing Congress remains in place until the beginning of January. I think it's January 3rd is the first business day of the, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but I think that's when the new Congress gets sworn in. So there's a lot that can happen. Kevin, any pending legislation or things that we could expect?
So if you listen to Senate Majority Leader Schumer, the priorities for the rest of this Congress are just a handful of items. One is confirming judges. So, when you control the Senate, one thing you can do without the House being involved is confirm judges. There's a number of vacancies that President Biden has nominated folks to fill. So that's going to take up a fair amount of the Senate's calendar. Apart from that, we're at a point where getting the lights on is going to be a priority again. So I think spending expires right around or on Christmas. And I would expect that December is spent with a fair amount of work on an omnibus spending bill. As you said, there's not a ton of days in the year. There's also not a ton of legislative days in the year because, Congress is, just had the election. Folks who were not reelected tend to come to DC less during the lame duck after they have retired or been voted out. And that leaves kind of a limited amount of time over the next, probably really 20 business days for Congress to complete its work for the year. So from my vantage point, there may be opportunities to attach things like, I don't know, you could see a 403B CIT fix get attached to something or other provisions that could be viewed as technical corrections. That being said, the primary legislative goal is going to be getting 2025 spending done.
Yeah, and David, same question for you. I want to get your perspective because there's going to be a flurry of activity, and I want to ask you how you both are going to handle it as a follow-up, but give us your legislative priorities as you see them.
Sure. Well, first of all, I agree completely with Kevin. We have had on the retirement side, I'll say the discussion draft of secure technical corrections, secure 2.0 technical corrections out there. We could have another sort of continuing resolution to move funding down 6 months without an omnibus because they just want to get things done and just move the ball forward, which means maybe something would get attached or not. We've all heard sort of the it's going to move statement on any type of legislation for years. I remember when Kevin and I would talk to you about, will PEPs ever happen? And it only took 6 years or 8 years. So there is a chance of that. There's a chance of things will coming back. Every couple of weeks you hear, oh, the CIT and 403B bill is moving. It'll be interesting to see, but that might come back into play, or it might be, let's get the judges done and let's get out of here and just kick the can down the road. It's not supposed to be a negative on anybody. So I agree with Kevin. I think there's a chance we'll have something that gets dropped in, but I also think there's a real chance we just sort of fund it forward, roll it forward, and we see where we are early next year, especially with the first Trump administration tax cuts high on the priority list for next year. But that's a coming soon discussion.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great teaser for 2025 and and what that's going to look like. Before we go, gentlemen, I just want to ask you, so I can't remember 4 years ago what it was like transitioning from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. How are you guys going to be situated? Because as you said, there's 20 legislative days, but you gentlemen, I'll start with you, David, first. You have to be in the loop on all these things. So how do you plan to stay up to speed?
Well, I think we're all watching. Anybody who tells you they definitively know everything is
Yeah.
making a little bit of it up. I think at this point, and especially my colleague and friend Kevin here, there's a lot of discussions and it's watching things move, and sometimes things move fast. And this is part of our day-to-day job as lawyers, both with a legislative and lobbying practice, as well as with a counseling practice. You just have to adapt on the fly, and change is a constant part of what we do in our field. And we've had the fiduciary ups and downs, the saga, as Kevin described it. I thought of like the many books of Harry Potter. And we're probably going to face the same thing on ESG, but we'll get into that. So I think it's one of those, you just roll with the punches. It's part of things, and keep talking. I know Kevin is very focused on this, so I would love to hear
Yep.
his.
Yeah, David, thank you. And Kevin, take us home.
So David, that didn't sound like a denial that you could be Secretary Levine in the next administration.
The perfect answer is I am very happy at Grimm Law Group.
That being said, we're spending, we spend a fair amount of time on the road counseling clients and meeting with different groups. In light of the transition, there's just a whole lot more activity going on in DC, both related to policy priorities for the next administration, personnel changes for this administration and the next administration, and then counseling around potential shifts in personnel to make sure they're up to speed on the issues that the retirement industry faces. At bottom, it means that David and I are spending significantly more time in DC than we normally do, even though we're both based in DC. So it's an exciting time, and I just wish it was a little bit warmer.
Yeah, but you get to spend it together. I know you guys are great colleagues and have become great friends. Kevin, David, great to see you. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back to talk about how things start to shape up for 2025. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Polls, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.